Hi, I'm Anna. If you'd told me 5 years ago that I'd be leading one of the fastest growing creative teams on the West Coast, I might have laughed. And not because I didn't think I had it in me, but because I already knew what people like her would say. Her, as in my sister, Brittany, the girl who graduated top of her class, walked into corporate banking like she was born for it, and never missed a chance to remind me that she made more in a week than I did in a month. Brittany had a way of complimenting you that somehow left a bruise. Anna's so creative, she'd say at family dinners, voice dripping in that syrupy sweet tone that made people smile, until they looked at my face. She's always chasing some passion project. It's cute. That's who Brittany is. Always the headliner, always the favorite, always the one who assumed I'd stay a supporting act in the family documentary, which made what happened that night feel almost cinematic. The dinner wasn't anything fancy, just a Friday night, Mom's roast chicken, Dad's forced optimism, and the sound of Brittany's heels clicking against the tile like she owned the room. My parents had asked me to come home to celebrate. Their word, not mine. Anna has news, Mom had said earlier on the phone. Big news, right? I nodded. Yeah, I've been promoted. Director level? She asked, like it was a quiz. I could almost hear the echo of disappointment revving up. Creative director, I replied. Full team, bigger clients, my own department. There was a pause. Then she said, "Oh, that's nice, honey." So I didn't expect streamers. Still, when I walked into the kitchen, my dad gave me a half hug, my mom offered wine, and Brittany, well, she smirked. She was wearing that soft pink blazer she saves for job interviews and other performances, the one that makes her look both successful and likable, which is kind of her brand. She barely looked up from her phone. "You're what now?" she said, casually setting down her glass. "Creative director," I repeated. Her eyes sparkled with that kind of interest you don't want from her, the kind that's always 5 seconds away from mockery. "Oh, wow," she said slowly. "So they're just giving titles away now, huh?" I blinked. My mother's fork paused midair. Dad cleared his throat but didn't say a word. I took a sip of my wine. "I earned it." Brittany chuckled. "Of course, babe. No offense, it's just, you've always been more of a big ideas person, not really management material." I laughed softly, not because it was funny. "That's interesting, my CEO thought otherwise." She smiled, the way some people smile before a knife goes in. "Good for you. Hope you get a real office. Not one of those glass ones next to the printer." My jaw tightened, but I didn't bite. I've learned something over the years. When someone underestimates you loud enough, let them. It makes the payoff better. What none of them knew, what Brittany definitely didn't know, was that my name had just been added to the company's top clients list. That my department had just closed a $1.8 million campaign that morning. That the team of interns she used to call artsy misfits now had a wait list of Ivy Leaguers begging to get in. No, to Brittany, I was still the girl who got rejected from her first internship and cried in the pantry. The one who wore thrifted heels to her first pitch and got laughed out of the room. The girl who tried. But something shifted that night. Something final. And it wasn't just her words. It was what happened next. The next day, I was walking through the office early, prepping for our Monday strategy sprint, when HR pinged me. "Quick heads up. New applicant referred for junior comms. Has your last name. Any relation?" I opened the resume, blinked twice. Brittany M., former VP, Consumer Finance Strategy. Seeking new opportunities after departmental restructuring. Huh, how poetic. Ever had someone doubt you? And then end up knocking on your door? The HR email hit my inbox at 8:14 a.m. on Monday. I hadn't even finished my first sip of coffee when I saw the subject line, "New hire orientation, Brittany M." I stared at it. Not because I was surprised. Brittany always landed on her feet. But because I realized something. She didn't know. She had applied blind. No idea whose department she'd stepped into. No clue whose name was on the internal org chart. No hint that the same creative little sister she used to mock was now her manager. I leaned back in my chair, the morning sun cutting lines across my desk. I clicked into the hiring history, read the recruiter notes, saw the words, strong communication, assertive, a little pushy but confident. Yeah, that tracked. They'd placed her in a project support role. She'd assist our comms and strategy leads on a high-stakes automotive rebrand. It was messy work. Fast deadlines, high pressure, zero room for egos. I thought about redirecting her to a different team, giving myself some distance. But then I stopped. No. Let her see it. Let her sit in the room she never imagined I'd own. When Brittany walked into the office that morning, the first thing I noticed was her outfit. It was polished. Perfect. Too perfect. A soft blue silk blouse, cream pencil skirt, hair in a tight twist. What she wore when she needed to project power. She didn't make eye contact with me at first. Her eyes were scanning, calculating. "Good morning," she said, tone bright but clipped. "So, where should I sit?" I stood. "We've reserved a desk near the strategy team, just down the hall." Her smile was tight. "Cool. And you're leading this department?" Her voice didn't quite hide it. That slight upward lilt at the end, the disbelief wrapped in casual. I nodded. "That's right." She blinked. "Wow." I waited. "Good for you," she added, with the same tone people use when they find out their ex got engaged to someone younger. By the end of the first week, I knew exactly how this was going to go. She didn't overtly disrespect me. No eye rolls in meetings, no snide remarks in front of the team. Brittany was smarter than that, but I'd catch it. In the way she subtly dismissed junior members' input, how she forgot to loop me in on major updates, the way she turned brainstorming into low-key power grabs. And most people didn't notice. But I did, because I'd seen it before. Brittany had always been the kind of person who could cut you with a compliment. Anna's always been creative. She's like a hummingbird, constantly fluttering around, never still. When we were kids, she told people I was sensitive, like it was a personality defect. Now she was trying to play nice, but underneath, I saw it. The panic. Her resume was spotless, but her last company folded. She'd been out of work for longer than she wanted to admit, and here she was, starting over, answering to me. Week 2, things escalated. We were prepping for a major pitch to one of the top electric car brands in the country. Brittany had been assigned to assist on the client research deck. She asked to explore direction A, while the team had agreed on direction B. I let her try it. No harm in letting her sweat through a mock draft. 2 days later, I walked into the strategy room. Brittany was already there, with Greg, our senior client partner. My name wasn't on the calendar invite, but her version of the deck, on the screen. "And if we position them as not just an EV company, but a movement, we can own the cultural conversation," she said, flipping slides with practiced ease. I stood in the doorway. Greg turned and smiled. "Hey, Anna. Brittany was just walking me through some potential pivot ideas." "Interesting," I said calmly. I wasn't aware we were repitching the entire direction. Brittany didn't flinch. I figured it couldn't hurt to explore an alternate path. Greg seemed open. I looked at her. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't humiliate her. I just said, "Let's review it together before you share any further. We don't want to confuse the client with misaligned messaging." She smiled. "Of course." But her eyes said something else. They said, "This isn't over." Later that night, I sat at my desk long after the others had gone. I opened her version of the deck. It wasn't bad. Polished, confident, very Brittany. But it lacked empathy. No warmth. Just metrics and metaphors stacked like resume lines. I pulled out my own draft, the one I'd built with the team. I read through it again, every sentence shaped by voices other than mine, the way it should be. And then I did something I hadn't done since we were kids. I gave her a chance. I scheduled a one meeting. "You wanted to see me?" she asked the next morning, stepping into my office like she already had a foot out. "Yeah," I said, closing my laptop. "I wanted to talk about your direction on the pitch." She sat across from me, arms folded. "Let me guess. It wasn't collaborative enough." I shook my head. "It was smart, clean, but you left the human part out." Her brow lifted. "You used to tell me I was too emotional," I continued. "Now I run a team that leads with story and impact, and it works." "Anna, I'm not trying to turn this into a lesson. I'm saying if you want to grow here, you have to learn how to listen, not just perform." For a second, she said nothing. Then, "Is this about the past?" About me not supporting you? I looked her in the eye. It's about the present. You're on a good team, but you're not above this team. She exhaled slowly. Fine. Noted. But I knew that tone. She hadn't heard a thing. Ever worked with someone who pretended to collaborate, but had their own script? The idea wasn't just good, it was razor sharp. A campaign built around absence, a car commercial where you never actually see the car, just the space it leaves behind, a driveway before and after, the shadow it casts as it leaves a garage at dawn, the outline on dusty pavement. We'd been working on it for weeks, quietly, between midnight Slack messages and scrapped versions no one would ever see. My team had cried over this one, good tears, the kind that come when something finally clicks, when the story gets under your skin. And Brittany? She walked right into my office and asked for the full deck. For what? I asked without looking up. She leaned against the doorframe. Oh, just prepping some internal notes for next week's review. I thought I'd get ahead of it. There was a beat of silence. I knew that tone. I had lived with that tone. You can pull the most recent from the shared folder, I said evenly. Make sure you credit the strategy team for the data points. They worked hard on them. She smiled like I'd just complimented her earrings. Of course, she said. Wouldn't dream of it. By the time the company's creative showcase rolled around, a monthly internal ritual where departments demo ideas across teams, Brittany had already hinted that she might present something exciting. I didn't think much of it, until I walked into the atrium that morning and saw my concept up on the main screen. Only now it had a new title, The Space Between, and Brittany's name below it. She was already standing near the podium, confident, glowing, polished. My jaw didn't drop. My fists didn't clench. I just watched. She clicked the first slide. The best way to sell movement, she said to the room, is to show stillness. We've seen flashy car ads for decades. Power, speed, sound. But what if the real story was what's left behind? People leaned in, heads nodded. I looked around. My junior strategist, Marcus, caught my eye from across the room. He blinked twice, hard, then mouthed, Is this real? Yes it was. Later that day, she popped into my office like nothing happened. So, she said, unwrapping a protein bar. Thoughts on the deck? I stared at her. You presented my team's concept as your own. She tilted her head. Your team's concept? I thought it was a group brainstorm. I made a few tweaks. You renamed it, rewrote the taglines, didn't credit a single contributor. Anna, she said, voice tightening, if this is about ego, it's about ethics. She rolled her eyes. God, you sound like a college syllabus. And just like that, she walked out. I didn't call her out publicly, not yet, because I was already building something she didn't see coming. I had copies of the Slack threads, the original time-stamped drafts, the version history from the shared Google Drive. I had the receipts, but more importantly, I had witnesses, not the kind who tattle, the kind who notice. A week later, Brittany was assigned to present the campaign to our client's East Coast office. It was a remote session, high stakes and heavily monitored by our leadership team. She went in confident. She always went in confident. But halfway through the pitch, the lead client paused her. I've seen a version of this, he said, at a cross-agency retreat. There was a creative director, West Coast, I believe. Anna, something? Brittany's voice faltered. Oh, that must have been an earlier draft. He looked at the screen again. Strange. This version feels diluted. Did the original team sign off on this pivot? Silence. I didn't have to say a word. She said it for me. That night, she barged into my office. You humiliated me. I stayed seated. I didn't say anything. You knew they'd recognize it. You let me walk into that call. You wanted the spotlight. You got it. Her face twisted. You've been waiting for this. For payback. I shook my head slowly. No, I've been waiting for you to grow up. But I stopped holding my breath. She didn't reply, just stood there, small for once. Then she turned and left. But the fallout wasn't done. Greg, our client partner, scheduled a formal review. Brittany's access to the shared folder was revoked. She was pulled from client-facing duties. And in her place, Marcus, the intern she used to ignore in meetings. He got a promotion. He got the credit. He got the room. The first red flag didn't show up in my inbox. It showed up on Twitter. A user with a generic handle, something forgettable like Sinsight Edge Pro, posted a blurry screenshot from one of our unreleased campaign slides, captioned, "Big brands trying to fake depth again. Nice try." At first, I thought maybe it was a coincidence, a similar concept floating in the ether. We'd seen it before. Parallel thinking in the creative world happens more often than people realize. But then I zoomed in. The color code on the footer, the style of the font, the exact phrasing of our closing line. This wasn't parallel thinking, this was ours. Leaked. I called Marcus into my office. "You see this?" I asked, spinning my screen toward him. He leaned in, eyes narrowing. "That's our mood board. Version 3.2, I added, from last Thursday." Marcus blinked. "But that folder's access restricted. Just core team and support staff," I finished. A silence stretched between us. There were only 6 people who had touched that version, and one of them had a reason to be petty. I didn't accuse her, not right away. Instead, I asked IT to pull access logs. Internal only. No outside vendors involved. I knew if I came in swinging, she'd just spin it. Play victim. She always had a script for that. While I waited for the audit, I watched her. Brittany had been quiet for the past few days. Not apologetic, just careful. Her posture had changed, more guarded in meetings, quicker to interject when others started speaking too long, like she needed to remind everyone she was still here. On Friday afternoon, she dropped a comment during our group sync that landed harder than she realized. "Some of us are still waiting for an apology," she said, eyes flicking to me like a dare. I looked up from my notes. "Apology for what exactly?" She blinked. "For letting the client think I was dishonest?" A few people shifted in their seats. "I didn't let the client think anything," I replied. "They recognized their own notes from our previous session. That's on them." Brittany folded her arms, lips pressed thin. "You made me look like a thief." I held her gaze. "You made you look like a thief." Silence. Then a quiet cough from someone at the back, and the moment broke. But the tension didn't leave the room. It thickened. When the IT report came in Monday morning, I already knew what it would say. Still, there's a difference between suspicion and certainty. Brittany's device had downloaded a zipped copy of the folder at 11:42 p.m. on Thursday night. The same night version 3.2 had been finalized. The IP address that posted the leak online? A public Wi-Fi signal from a co-working cafe 5 blocks from her apartment. She thought she was being clever. She underestimated just how closely we track internal security. I didn't take it to HR. I took it to the executive director. We met in a soundproofed conference room with glass walls and minimal furniture, intentionally impersonal. He was already reviewing the printed report when I walked in. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "She tried to sabotage the campaign," I said calmly. "And worse, she didn't even do it well." He looked up, one brow raised. I continued. "This wasn't an accident. She used an outside network to post a deliberately damaging asset, and she targeted me, not just the company." His jaw tightened. "You want to file for internal breach?" I paused, then said, "Not yet." He tilted his head. "Why not?" "Because I'd rather move her somewhere she can't do any damage, and let her watch this team succeed without her." That afternoon I requested her reassignment. I gave her the news in private. "I'm moving you to events logistics," I said. "Support team, short-term campaigns. You'll report to the project manager directly." Her eyes widened. "You're demoting me?" "I'm reassigning you. You can't just exile me because you're insecure." I leaned forward, voice still steady. "I'm not insecure, Brittany. I'm informed. Logs don't lie." Her jaw clenched. "You can't prove anything." I smiled. "I don't have to. You've already proven enough." She stood up so fast the chair screeched. "You're just mad because I've always been better." I didn't flinch. "No," I said. "You've just always been louder." She reported to events the next morning. No desk, no assistant, just a hot seat workspace by the supply closet and a rotating shift schedule. I didn't gloat. I didn't say a word. But Marcus brought me coffee with a note tucked under the sleeve. "Still waters run deep, and sometimes they drag people under." It didn't end with the reassignment. I think in her mind, that was the last humiliation she could tolerate without striking back. Because when you take power from someone who's used to wielding it like a weapon, they don't just surrender, they rearm. And Brittany? She always preferred revenge dressed in silk. The email came on a quiet Thursday afternoon. No subject line, just a PDF attachment titled, Anonymous Concern, Anna L. At first glance, it looked like a whistleblower form. But when I opened it, my blood chilled. It was a complaint, formal in tone, structured in HR language, but riddled with distortions. Allegations of abuse of authority, emotional favoritism, and even claims that I'd created a hostile environment for employees with traditional leadership values. Traditional leadership values? That was rich. The complaint referenced dates and meetings, moments twisted just enough to seem plausible, if someone squinted. It painted me as calculating, vindictive, and manipulative, which, ironically, was what Brittany had been. But now she was writing that version of me. The kicker? It was signed, Anonymous. But I knew. God, I knew. Are you okay? Marcus asked when he stepped into my office later. I must have looked off. It's not every day you read your own character funeral, typed up like legal evidence. I pushed the laptop toward him. He read it quickly, jaw tightening by the second. This is... wow, he muttered. She really thinks she can flip the script. She's not trying to get me fired, I said slowly. She's trying to ruin my name, quietly, behind a mask. Marcus looked up. You're going to respond, right? I closed the laptop. Not yet. He frowned. You can't just let this sit. I nodded. I'm not letting it sit. I'm letting it bake. That weekend, I drove 2 hours north. Not for some escape, there wasn't time for that, but for a meeting I had scheduled 3 weeks ago, one Brittany didn't know about. I'd been approached months ago by a partner agency in Portland. They were launching a new firm. Bold, ethics forward, talent first, small team, big ambitions. They wanted me to co-lead it. I hadn't committed. Until now. When I sat across from their founder in a corner coffee shop, tucked between moss-covered bookstores, she smiled and said, You look like someone who just made a decision. I did. I'm in, I told her. But I'm bringing people with me. Back at the office, I played it normal. I answered emails, took meetings, signed off on budgets, smiled at Brittany when we passed in the hall like nothing had changed. She smiled back, too wide, too knowing. I knew what she was thinking. You won the battle, but I'll win the war. What she didn't know, I'd already left the battlefield. 3 weeks later, I handed in my resignation. Not through a dramatic announcement, no tears, no theatrics, just a calm, brief meeting with our executive director. I've accepted a leadership role elsewhere, I said. One that allows me to build the kind of culture we kept talking about, but never quite created here. He looked stunned. Anna, you're one of the few people actually making that culture happen. I nodded. That's exactly why I have to go, because it shouldn't depend on one person surviving sabotage. He was quiet for a long beat. Then he asked, Can I ask, is this about Brittany? I met his eyes. It's about the system that let Brittany become the consequence instead of the exception. I didn't make an announcement to the team. Instead, I sent 12 individual emails, each one thoughtful, specific, meant for the person reading it. To Marcus, I wrote, You already lead with more integrity than most senior execs I've met. Keep choosing people over pride. To my junior designer, Leah, Your work cracked something open in me. Keep creating like it matters, because it does. To Brittany, I sent nothing. Let her find out the way she always found out about things that didn't revolve around her. Secondhand. Too late. On my last day, I cleared my desk in silence. I left the ceramic mug she once gave me for my birthday, painted with Boss Babe in cursive gold. A joke then, a prophecy now. As I walked out, Brittany stood by the elevator, arms crossed. Leaving? She asked casually. I nodded. Building something better? She tilted her head. With who? I didn't answer, just smiled. When the door slid shut, I looked at my reflection in the steel panel. Calm, certain, free. There's a silence that follows someone's exit when they mattered more than people wanted to admit. It settles over the office like dust, invisible at first, but after a while, it's in the air, on your skin, in your lungs. That's what the floor felt like after I left. I wasn't there to see it, obviously, but I heard. Whispers reached me in Slack messages, in quiet LinkedIn updates, in polite texts from people who used to only reply thumbs up. Morale dipped. Creative momentum slowed. Turnover ticked up. But the most unexpected shift, Brittany stayed, and no one followed. 2 weeks after I left, Brittany tried to pitch a collaborative revitalization initiative. Her words, not mine. She called it Team First Fridays and promised rotating leadership sessions and department breakfasts. Only 2 people signed up. One of them thought it was mandatory. That Monday, Marcus went live with a post tagging me and announcing his official role as senior creative strategist at my new firm. The caption? When leadership walks the talk, people follow. I didn't comment. I didn't repost. But Brittany saw it. She always kept score. Back at the agency, she started showing up earlier, staying later, hosting unnecessary check-ins that no one asked for. Her new team, junior staff, contractors, temps, didn't know her well enough to challenge her. But they didn't lean in either. They kept their heads down, did their hours, and left when the clock struck. She was a manager now, but no one let her lead. The real fracture came on a rainy Thursday, during the agency's quarterly town hall. Brittany had asked to present a new culture initiative. Word was, she rehearsed it with HR. But when she walked on stage, the lights caught the strain on her face. She wore a navy pantsuit, hair in its default twist, voice firm, but thin. The same tone she used when she was about to be turned down and didn't want to show it. I want to talk about rebuilding from within, she said. We've had a lot of change, some departures. But this is an opportunity for evolution, not regression. She clicked to the next slide. A quote appeared on screen. Sometimes what breaks you builds what matters most. At the bottom corner? My initials. There was a pause, then a quiet shift in the room. One of those unspoken collective thoughts. Did she really just quote Anna? Someone coughed. Someone else whispered. She kept talking, but it didn't matter. The message was clear. You can't borrow power from someone whose shadow you tried to erase. That weekend, she went home. Not to her condo. Home, to our parents. I wasn't planning to be there. It was supposed to be a quick visit. Drop off some documents. Grab Mom's antique vase for the new office lobby. But fate has its sense of timing. When I walked in, she was sitting at the kitchen table. Same seat she used to claim like it was throne adjacent. She looked up, blinked once, didn't stand. Hi, I said. She nodded. Didn't know you were coming. Wasn't planning to stay. Mom entered the room, caught between us. She smiled tightly. Girls, maybe you can... It's fine, I cut in. I just came for the vase. But Brittany spoke. She told me. I paused. Told you what? Mom, about the thing you did. I frowned. You'll need to be more specific. She stood slowly. Back when I got the banking job, at Firmwell, she said you were the one who flagged the old credit inquiry, that if you hadn't cleaned up the report, I never would have passed the background check. I looked at Mom. She wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't want her to know then, Mom whispered. I figured it would only cause tension. You helped me, Brittany said, and you never said anything. I let the silence stretch. She swallowed hard. Why? Because I wanted you to get it, I said quietly. And because I knew you wouldn't thank me, not really. Her voice cracked. So you did it out of guilt? No, I did it out of hope. That shut her up. I didn't stay long. As I was about to leave, she followed me to the door. Anna, she said, voice smaller than I'd ever heard it. Do you think I'm a bad person? I paused. That's the thing about siblings. They don't ask questions like that unless the answers already haunted them. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no. You're not the person you think you are, I said, but maybe that's a place to start. Then I left. The ballroom shimmered with brushed steel and backlit logos. Industry night, awards, networking, applause on cue. I stood near the side wall, one hand curled around a glass of sparkling water, scanning the crowd. Familiar faces floated past. Agency execs, ex-clients, hopeful interns circling like satellites. Then I saw her. Brittany. She looked smaller. not physically, but something in the way her blazer hung, the way her eyes scanned without locking on anyone. She was clutching a name tag too long, a hesitation most people wouldn't catch. But I did. She spotted me, straightened, walked over like nothing had happened. "Hey," she said. "Didn't expect to see you here." I smiled. "This is my client's event." "Oh," she said, "of course." Pause. Then, "You started something real, huh?" I nodded once. "Yeah." She looked down at her heels, then back up. "I was wondering if maybe there's a place on your team. I've been looking for something that feels different." I let that land, let her sit with it. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out a small white envelope, simple, clean. "Entry-level operations," I said. "Tight deadlines, no shortcuts." She blinked. "Wait, this is—" I cut in, gently. "You once told me I wasn't built for this world. Turns out I wasn't, so I built my own." And before she could respond, I turned, stepped into the circle of people who saw me now, not as someone's little sister, but as the woman who made it happen. Sometimes we think winning means proving someone wrong, but real strength? It's building something better, without needing their permission. I spent years trying to be enough for people who only saw me as less than, until I realized I didn't have to change their minds. I just had to choose me. If you've ever been doubted, dismissed, or underestimated, this is your reminder. You don't need a seat at their table. You can build your own. And when they come knocking, you'll know the difference between power and peace. Have you ever had someone try to write your ending, but you flipped the story instead? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from, or what part hit you hardest. And hey, if this story spoke to you, even just a little, hit that subscribe button. There's more where this came from. Let's keep growing, together.